Hello, I'm Liz Lumley of Finextra, and we're here at the SAP Financial Services Forum in London. And today I'm speaking to Patrick Griffin of Ripple. Hello.
Thank you very much for having me.
Very good. Of course, we're going to talk about distributed ledgers. So do they represent a disruptive force upon the financial services industry, or is it more of an opportunity?
So this is a great question. I think that this is the first reaction that most, I think, incumbents or analysts have when they take a look at this technology and the space in general. I think the answer is a mix of yes and no. I think where it is disruptive, it's certainly suggesting or offering up a new model for moving money cross-border, domestically, that I think does have the potential to upend old business models, particularly around correspondent banking and how money is handled and transferred and managed between financial institutions to provide access to different payment systems and different payment networks. I think the promise of this technology, however, is not necessarily outside of the realm of the existing banking infrastructure. It requires incumbent banks and asset custodials to continue providing the role of credible counterparties holding and securing assets. So in a lot of ways, where I think there is as much threat, there's opportunity, and I think the promise of the space, in the end state, what we think is you're going to see something. This is kind of very Silicon Valley, where you're going to see a rise in volume, an increase in volume across the whole sector, just simply because of marginal costs of processing payments, moving payments, managing cash, and allocating capital will just come down dramatically. So that should have an overall increase in the overall supply of payment volume moving through the system, and that's an opportunity for everybody.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think a lot of people in banking are looking to reduce a lot of the friction in the underlying sort of payments infrastructure. But of course, with financial services, the issues of regulation come up. Is there any sort of global consensus on regulating, the use of distributed ledgers?
Well, I think the jury is still out, although forming, I think, a consolidated opinion. Certainly, we've had our own workings and dealings with enforcement and regulators over the last year and a half. And what I would say is the impact of the technology here is most profound when considered as infrastructure. This technology really cannot be construed as a payment system. It's really, actually, as a payment system, it's fairly incomplete. It's not a good outcome. It's just technology. It's accounting systems which can track accounts and balances.
A lot of people in the industry talk about issues of scale, for example.
Sure. Well, I think scale is when you say scale, do you mean?
Well, like the existing banking infrastructure handles trillions of transactions.
Sure. Well, I mean, scale is certainly an interesting area. I frankly think it's an elephant in the room. I mean, when you look at these systems, a lot of these systems, they have real limitations. Certainly something like the blockchain, when people talk about Bitcoin, this is a system that can only handle about 7 transactions per second when compared with Visa or MasterCard, which are handling tens of thousands of transactions a second and are at overcapacity. And I think, just clicking back and thinking about the regulatory considerations here, when viewed as infrastructure, the existing compliance and regulatory regimes that we have in place today for AML, BSA, travel for cross-border payments, those are really largely intact. Even on the consumer merchant level, the protections that have been put in place today fit nicely on top of this infrastructure, and this infrastructure is really just about facilitating settlement and clearing out obligations and removing exposures and credit that are incurred over the course of payments. And I think the exciting aspect or promising aspect here is that the new regulations are not required. I certainly think that's one approach, and certainly that we've seen that in places like the state of New York. But we've also seen a lot of central bankers take a look at this technology and recognize that there's no risk management system, there's no rules for standardizing membership or message transmission. Really all there is a ledger which can store historical information about who owes what. It's a settlement system. So taken on its own, incomplete as a payment system, taken together with existing rules and schemes, the regulatory, I think, obligations are quite clear.
Interesting. So we talked a lot about banks. We talked a bit about the regulatory environment. But what about the customers of the banks, the corporate treasurers? What are the benefits to them for these types of platforms?
So this is a great question. You're leading the witness here. I think the promise in this space, certainly for us, is we've as a company have really focused on incumbents, and we've been really focused on wiring together the existing financial system just a lot better. Rather than say build a new parallel banking system, we think the one we have today works great. So the interesting aspect to our conversations that we have with banks is really around. It's a fairly nuanced conversation. We talk to a bank, and as you can imagine, on the left hand there's positives, and on the right hand there's negatives. And the calculus is complex in understanding for a tier 1 global bank the impact of these systems and what they mean for their traditional lines of business. What is very clear, however, is the quantifiable value that these technologies represent to their clients. So for us, certainly we are focused on bringing banks into this ecosystem and allowing them to wire together their back-end payments between one another just a lot more effectively. Really, we're all about intra-bank wholesale payments. It's very, very straightforward industry that we're focused on. But their clients tend to be the most quantifiable. So we can go and talk to a corporate treasurer and talk to them about how this technology allows them to free up their working capital, in particular the cash that's trapped in their payments treasury cash management business, which in some cases can amount to billions upon billions of dollars of cash trapped in operating accounts all over the world to service supply chains. What's very clear and very obvious certainly with the Ripple technology is the opportunity for a corporate treasurer to free up billions of dollars of cash that's trapped, uninvestable in these operating accounts, and repurpose that cash for other aspects of their business, like perhaps they're buying back shares, paying down debt, reinvesting cash. And the reason why that is simply because we have are enabling a robust marketplace of cash accounts and deposits, which can be used to fund bank accounts, and those cash deposits are provided by third-party providers, investment banks, hedge funds, trading firms, who are now for the very first time competing for retail and commercial flows. And they're doing so by funding accounts internationally and offering up those accounts for sale in the service of a payment. So now a corporate treasurer can execute a payment in real time against a funded position. The important thing is the corporate treasurer does not have to fund that position. A third party is funding that position, and that gives them the opportunity to free up a lot of their working capital that's today tied up in these transaction accounts all over the world.